friend. So I've been sitting with something. We've been talking about birth. Not just the birth of babies, but the different ways that we are born throughout a lifetime. And in my last journal entry, I said that I've been born more than once. And I believe that. I still believe it. But there's another side of that conversation that I do not want to skip over. Because if we're going to talk about birth honestly, we have to also acknowledge that not every birth feels like something to celebrate. Some versions of ourselves are born because something beautiful happened. We fell in love. We became a parent. We discovered something that we were good at. We finally said yes to something we dreamed about. Those are births that are easier to recognize. We take the pictures, we tell people, we celebrate. But then, there were the other births. The ones that nobody throws a party for. They are the versions of us that are born because something happened that we never would have chosen. Maybe somebody left. Maybe somebody died. Maybe the relationship ended. Maybe the job disappeared. Maybe your health changed. Maybe your children grew up and suddenly everything in the role that organized so much of your life changed with them. Maybe you finally walked away from something. Or even though knowing leaving was necessary, you still grieve what could have been or what you hoped could have been. And now here you are, different. Not necessarily because you wanted to become different, but because life requires something from you that the person you were before you had never had to carry. That's a birth too. And I think sometimes we rush past that. We love the transformation stories when we already know the ending. And you know the ones. Everything fell apart, but look at me now. And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with celebrating how far you've come. Celebrate you. But sometimes all I'm saying is you're still in the middle of it. You don't know what this becoming is yet. You don't know whether you're going to look back and call this the best thing that ever happened to you. And maybe you never will. I'm just saying. I think that's important. Because I don't believe every painful experience has to eventually become something that we're grateful happens. I can recognize that something changed in me without pretending I wanted it. And I can recognize that something formed me without calling the fracture a gift. And I can honor who I became without celebrating what it took for me to get here. That's different. I've had experiences in my own life that introduced me to versions of myself I would have never met otherwise. And there are parts of those women that I deeply love. I love their courage, their discernment, their ability to survive things they once thought that they couldn't, their boundaries, their tenderness, their ability to recognize what matters. But if you asked me, would you choose everything that happened in order to become her? No, absolutely not. But there are things I would still change if I could. There are people I would still want here. There are endings I wouldn't have chosen. There are experiences I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I don't think acknowledging that diminishes who I've become. I think it makes room for the whole truth. And maybe that's part of what I'm learning about birth. We can welcome the person who is emerging without celebrating everything that caused her emergence. You understand? You understand? Those are two different things. And maybe somebody needs permission to hear that today. Because people may be telling you, look how strong you are now. Everything happens for a reason. It made you who you are. And maybe you're thinking, but I didn't ask for this. And I hear that. I feel it. You don't have to turn your pain into gratitude to prove you're grown. You don't have to call devastation a blessing. And you don't have to make what happened beautiful. Sometimes the most truthful thing you can say is, I wish this hadn't happened. And then right beside that truth, and I'm beginning to recognize who I have become because it did. Both can exist. That's where this idea of birth becomes more complicated for me. Because birth isn't always about celebration. Sometimes it's about recognition. Sometimes something is here now that wasn't here before. A boundary, a knowing, a voice, a responsibility, a different understanding of yourself, a different relationship with life, maybe even a different definition of home. And before we decide whether it's good, before we turn it into a lesson, before we start telling the story of how everything worked out, maybe we can simply recognize something has been born here. And perhaps that's enough for today. But there's another reason I wanted to put this in my journal. Because as I develop this work around birth, bereavement, and beyond, I'm realizing more and more that these experiences don't always happen separately. Sometimes bereavement gives birth to something. Sometimes a birth requires grieving something that came before it. Sometimes we're becoming while we're grieving. Sometimes we're grieving while we're becoming. And sometimes we can't tell which one of the experiences that's happening. And maybe we don't need to. Maybe the first responsibility isn't to categorize the experience. Maybe it's simply to witness it. To say, something changed. Something mattered. Something is different now. And I'm going to give myself enough room to discover what that means. Ashe. So here's what I'm leaving in my journal today. Not every birth needs a celebration. Some births simply need acknowledgement. Some need silence. Some need tears. Some need time. Some need somebody willing to sit beside us without demanding that we find the silver lining. And some just need a witness. So, the reflection, what has been born in you through something you never would have chosen? And can you honor who you are becoming without forcing yourself to celebrate what brought you here? Don't rush to answer it though. Sit with it. Maybe write about it. Maybe don't. But just notice what comes. I'm Portia Graham. This is my living journal. Birth, bereavement, beyond. And until next time, friend, keep becoming.